And the 90s were known for having many monster movies released in theaters. Movies like Mimic, The Relic, Virus, Deep Blue Sea, and of course the biggest blockbuster of all, Jurassic Park. And the common thing about these movies is that they were about creatures in a specific place. The sewer, the sea, a museum, an island, and of course, boats. And one of the movies that most impressed me and was definitely one of my favorites at the time was Deep Rising from 1998, directed by Stephen Sommers. A movie that was a big flop at the time and few people saw in the theaters because it was released with the worst competitor any movie could have by being released together, Titanic. Another movie about a boat, but this time with no monster, just the pretty face of Leo DiCaprio. Which is a pity because this kind of movie with a creature that is adventure mixed with horror and a lot of action originated with Alien from 1979 and went through the 80s developing into many other movies with the same premise. And I think Deep Rising is one of the best in this idea, especially for having a very tight story, very well done, and with 1 hour and a half of movie. Remember the times where movies had 1 hour and a half of length and were perfectly able to tell their stories? I miss those times. And the plot is very simple. We have this cruise ship called Argonautica for the super rich people that is in a travel through the ocean, suffers an engine failure and stops, which makes it a perfect target for a giant sea creature to attack it from below, infiltrate in its decks, and basically devour everybody. At the same time, we have a group of mercenaries that is being transported by a special speedboat on the command of the navigator Finnegan, played by the late Treat Williams. And this group that has some familiar faces of actors that grew in their own careers later is on a mission to assault this cruise ship and its crew. This of course without Finnegan and his crew knowing about. But when they get to the cruise, of course they're gonna find the whole thing empty, basically a ghost ship, and find this creature that killed everybody called Octalus, creature that I already mentioned in a video here in the channel about the top 10 monsters that I think are underestimated in movies. Because even though Octalus is basically a giant octopus, he is very scary by the way he acts. Because its tentacles not only feed on human bodies, but drain all the fluids from its victims, leaving nothing more than the bones after being fed. And this brings some of the most gore and wonderful scenes, especially one with a mercenary in mid-process of being digested by the creature. Anyway, this is the basic premise, but the movie is very well constructed in its structure, keeping the monster pretty much in secret in the beginning of the movie. And little by little, along with the characters, we start to understand what it is, especially by seeing parts of it that are the tentacles, moving and infiltrating through the decks of the cruise ship. And then comes exactly what we like. Much action, the characters having to move from point A to point B to find an exit from the entrapped places of this boat, to escape the creature in the middle of much blood, death, action, and explosions. All the good stuff. And the movie was directed by Stephen Sommers, as I mentioned, a director that started to gain a lot of fame with this kind of creature adventure horror movies, pretty much in the style of old classic Universal pictures. Actually, he started his career with a lighter Disney movie, The Jungle Book, another version of the Mowgli story. Then in 98, he came to Deep Rising. Then right in 99, he came with another classic from our hearts, The Mummy, with Brendan Fraser. And not only he directed the first one, but also the second one, The Mummy Returns from 2001. Then he went to Van Helsing in 2004, bringing more classical monsters of cinema. But then in 2009, he kind of got lost with the release of G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra, and kind of wrapped his career over there, especially because this is not a very good movie, in my opinion at least. But with 4 movies in his career that has this element of creature feature with action and horror, This was a director that had a specialty in bringing this popcorn, blockbuster, fun action adventure to the screen. Also, he took a lot of chances with pushing the visual effects boundaries in these productions. So this is a pretty cool director in my opinion, especially because the characters in his movies always were very charismatic. And here is the same case. The script is very tight in making you familiarize with these characters pretty quick and feel a little attached to them, including the group of mercenaries. As I mentioned, you have Treat Williams in the role of Finnegan, a role that was originally meant to be for Harrison Ford, but the actor refused because this Finnegan character is too close to Han Solo. For his romantic interest, you have the gorgeous Famke Janssen, who is more famous for her role as Jean Grey in the X-Men movies. And I gotta say, in this movie she was in the peak of her beauty. Ooh la la. Also, we had the actor Kevin J. O'Connor, who worked in many more movies with Stephen Sommers, including The Mummy. And here he plays the mechanic Pentucci, who is the comic relief and definitely the most charismatic character in this movie. And usually these comic relief characters are very annoying in most of the movies, but here his character works very much because he is actually charismatic. In fact, he has many funny lines, including one that he asks the character of Famke Janssen while breathing very heavy, "Can you get asthma? Or you have to be born with it?" And then you have the group of mercenaries that has some familiar faces, like Wes Studi, who is their leader, Clifton Curtis, who has shown up in many other movies since the 90s, and Digimon Hansen in the very beginning of his career, 1 year prior to show up in the blockbuster Gladiator. In fact, this is so early in his career that he's the first one to die in a very stupid way with an axe to his head. He didn't even get the chance to meet the creature. Like I said, it's a pretty tight movie and very straightforward. The characters are trapped in the ship, they need to find a way out and escape the creature. Of course, there is a subplot where the owner of the ship had already a contract with the leader of the mercenaries so that they could assault the ship and sunk it with torpedoes that would explode the whole thing, and in that way he could get the insurance of the destruction. A very basic plot, all in the middle of a lot of action and a very explosive ending that is sure to leave the audience very satisfied. Now, one curiosity that I discovered about this movie many years later, in fact, I only found out about this last year, is that Deep Rising was not originally meant to be a standalone feature, but yet a prequel to an already famous and established franchise. I explain. In the end of the movie, without giving too many spoilers, when the main characters already escaped the whole mayhem in the cruise ship and defeated the creature, they end up in an abandoned island very near. And this ending shows that the characters believe they are very safe after escaping the whole threat of the Octalos, but then they hear a monstrous roar coming from inside the forest of the island. Then the camera pans out and widens the shot, showing a huge volcano in the middle of the island, with something moving through the trees of the forest. And obviously, when I was a kid, I didn't understand this ending. I didn't know what they meant with that. I used to believe, is the volcano the big threat that will eventually destroy the island? Or is there another creature in there? Only many years later, I found out that the intention of the director Stephen Sommers with this movie was to start a new King Kong universe in cinemas way before the 2005 King Kong from Peter Jackson. And the creature Octalus in this movie was nothing less than another giant creature that habitates the environment around the Skull Island from the King Kong universe. And this totally blew my mind because I thought, my God, this was genius. Why didn't they follow Deep Rising with a sequel and a new franchise? So this means that the characters of Deep Rising would eventually adventure in the Skull Island and face more creatures in this place. But unfortunately, this idea sunk, no pun intended, because the movie was a flop, like I mentioned before. So the director Stephen Sommers went to another project that was The Mummy. So no King Kong universe, no Skull Island until the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong, and of course the Monsterverse that we have with the King Kong Godzilla movies currently. So maybe it wasn't the best of the ideas to keep this connection in secret with Deep Rising, but I love and think it's fascinating to have a movie that is secretly connected to an already established franchise, but the audience won't know it until its end. The closer we got to this was with the M. Night Shyamalan movie Split, that had a post-credit scene showing the character that Bruce Willis played in Unbreakable, introduced in this universe, creating a connection with both of these movies and then developing into a third one, Glass, that concluded the trilogy of this universe. And I love this idea. I think it's much more fascinating than just a shared universe which you already know that everything takes place in the same world and you have to keep searching for references in each of the movies. So Deep Rising became one of those movies that I already loved when I was a kid, and now watching it became a much more pleasurable and fascinating experience just for this single element. Too bad that things didn't go forward, but it's okay. Deep Rising still is one of those fun popcorn blockbuster movies that if you want to have a 1.5 hour fun time, I highly recommend. And what about you? Do you like Deep Rising? Did you know this curiosity about this film? Comment below. And please, if you are liking the content of Trashing with Gus, don't forget to leave your beloved like in this video and also your wonderful subscription so we can keep trashing forever, alright? See you in the next trashing video, and bye-bye!